If you're looking to lose 30 pounds of stubborn body fat and actually keep it off, you've come to the right video. Over the last 10 years, I've coached over 1,000 men, many of whom lost well over 30 pounds, and in this video, I'm gonna give you the habits and systems you need to implement to finally get lean and have a body you can be proud of. And to explain this clearly, I want to introduce you to Joe and Chris. Joe and Chris are childhood best friends. They grew up in the same neighborhood, played the same sports, and stayed close even when life took them in different directions. Now they're both in their 40s with busy jobs that keep them sitting most of the day. They have young kids and a lot less free time. They also live a few hours apart, so they don't get to see each other as much as they used to, but they text very often. And one morning in early January, Joe messages Chris, "Man, I really need to lose some weight. I stepped on the scale this morning and I was 212 pounds. I don't think I've ever weighed this much." And Chris replies, "Yeah, I know what you mean. I had to buy bigger pants last month. This isn't good. I just weighed myself at 208 pounds. And Chris suggests, "Hey, why don't we set a goal to lose 30 pounds by the summer and hold each other accountable?" This felt like a perfect deadline because they already have a yearly family trip together in June. And just like that, the two friends commit to a goal. Now, Joe decides to go with a more common sense approach. He starts eating clean, stops snacking at night, and cuts back on takeout. He also downloads a food tracking app which sets his calories to 2,200. He eats more protein, logs some of his meals, and weighs himself once or twice a week. He also lifts 4 times per week with 30 minutes of cardio after each session. Christian, on the other hand, decides to be more analytical. Using a bunch of different tools he found online, he estimates his maintenance around 3,000 calories and sets his intake to 2,200 a day. He aims for 170 grams of protein each day, logs all of his meals, weighs himself every morning, and tracks his weekly average. He also lifts 4 days per week and focuses on getting 10,000 steps per day. On the surface, they're doing something very similar, and after a month, their results look almost identical. Joe texts Chris, "Man, I already lost 8 pounds this month. It feels great. How's your progress?" And Chris replies, "Great, I'm down about the same, 7 pounds. Not hungry or tired, so that's a plus." And Joe replies, "That's awesome. Honestly, this hasn't even been that hard." And the first month is where most guys get tricked. At the start of a fat loss phase, you don't really need to be that precise, and you're still gonna see some good progress. But that honeymoon period eventually comes to an end. Now, as we get into month 2 of cutting, both guys are still consistent, but now challenges are starting to appear. First, it's strong cravings after dinner. This gets Joe to occasionally grab a handful of nuts from the cupboard after the kids go to bed. And then also work gets busier and more stressful as things pick up after the holidays. This causes Joe to be grabbing lunch on the go most days, and he still grabs the healthier option, but doesn't track it because he doesn't know the ingredients. He's still seeing the scale go down, so he doesn't think much of it. Chris experiences the same challenges, but handles them differently. To deal with the late night cravings, he cuts back on his meal 1 and saves around 150 calories for a high protein snack after dinner. For lunch at work, he decides to bring his own food to save time and make sure he's getting enough protein. He's still weighing himself daily and tracking his weekly averages. He notices weight loss has slowed down slightly to about 1.5 pounds per week. Because he's watched my videos and kept hitting the like button, he knows that that's normal and doesn't change much. And as we arrive at the end of the second month, both guys are still losing weight, but the pace is no longer the same. Joe weighs himself and messages Chris, "Hey, I'm down another 4 pounds this month. I'm surprised it's not more. I haven't changed anything. How's your progress?" Chris looks at his spreadsheet and replies, "I'm down another 6 pounds this month. I'm really happy with how things are going so far." So after 2 months, Joe is down 12 pounds and Chris is down 13 pounds. That doesn't look like a big difference, but there is a shift happening. Joe is relying more and more on "I feel like I'm doing good," whereas Chris is relying more and more on actual data. And as we enter the 3rd month of the cut, this is where the separation really begins. Joe is starting to struggle a lot more with hunger. The lunch he's grabbing on the go at work isn't very filling, so he finds himself grazing more throughout the day. Every time there's a snack in the break room, he grabs a bit. He's also starting to rely more on estimating calories at home instead of properly tracking. He's invited to more social events on the weekends and sometimes ends up having a few drinks to take the edge off a stressful week. With all of that, his progress really slows down. Now, Chris is handling the situation differently. He manages his hunger at work by increasing protein and vegetables at lunch, which is easy because he's bringing his own meal. And this also allows him to start banking 300 calories 4 days per week and then using those saved calories on the weekends so that he can enjoy his social events. Right now, Chris is eating 1900 calories Monday to Thursday and 2500 calories Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And with this strategy, Chris drops another 5 pounds in the third month, while Joe feels like he's not making any progress this month. So he reaches out to Chris. "Man, I think I only dropped a pound this month, and I swear I'm doing the same things as before. I don't get it. How are you doing?" And Chris replies, "I'm still moving. I'm down about 5 pounds this month." And Joe really doesn't understand how Chris is still making great progress. He asks, "What am I missing? I'm eating healthy, I'm training hard, I'm still doing my cardio, but the scale isn't moving." And Chris thinks for a minute and replies, "Well, that sounds good, but how's your calorie intake? Are you logging everything?" Joe pauses and replies, "Yeah, I'm still logging some stuff. It's just been really hard to track everything. I don't know the ingredients for all the meals. Maybe I just need to up my cardio a bit." And Chris, not wanting to lecture Joe, just leaves it at that. And Joe feels like he's doing things right, but if we're being honest, he has no idea if he's actually in a calorie deficit. He doesn't know if he's eating 2200, 2600, or 3000 calories. It could be anything. It just feels like he's trying really hard. And it's also a very difficult problem to fix without any data to work with. This is why, as a coach, one of the things I always focus on is having detailed metrics with clients. Then no matter what happens, we know how to adjust things to keep progressing. And by the way, if you're interested in coaching with me, check the link in the description. So looking at the numbers after 3 months, Joe has lost 13 pounds and feels stuck, while Chris has lost 18 pounds with 12 pounds and 12 weeks to go until the family vacation in June. Now, as we get into month 4, Joe is slowly reaching his mental breaking point. Just a few weeks ago, he increased his cardio to an hour, 4 days per week, hoping to speed things up, but it backfired. It made him hungrier, which led to extra snacks in the evening. Seeing that he's falling behind Chris, Joe's getting very discouraged and slowly starts to lose focus. He's barely tracking any of his meals now, occasionally has junk food like he used to. Even worse, the drinking has slipped back into weekdays, and he starts skipping some of the workouts. Meanwhile, Chris is still making solid progress. He had to drop his calories by another 100 and increase his steps to 12K per day. This is something he expected since he already lost a good amount of weight and his metabolism adapted a bit. Chris is now on 1800 calories Monday to Thursday and 2400 calories on Friday to Sunday. Now, at the end of month 4, Joe steps on the scale and sees that he's actually gained 3 pounds. He's so ashamed, he doesn't even bother messaging Chris. He sees Chris's post on Instagram that he's officially down 24 pounds and decides to leave a comment instead of texting him. "Man, I'm so proud of you and I can't wait to enjoy a few beers on the beach next month." And with only 1 month left until the family trip in June, Joe and Chris are in completely different situations. Joe is down 10 pounds from the initial weight, while Chris is down 26 pounds. And at this point, Joe has almost fully reverted back into his old habits, and it's only a matter of time until he regains all the weight. Fast forward a few days before they meet up for the yearly vacation, Chris steps on the scale and sees that he's actually surpassed his goal of losing 30 pounds and weighs in at 176 pounds. He started at 208 and now lost a total of 32 pounds. And didn't just lose weight, he also built muscle and got stronger. And more importantly, he knows his numbers, so he just went into a calorie maintenance phase so he can enjoy the summer vacation. Joe, on the other hand, has gained even a few more pounds and shows up at the vacation weighing 207 pounds. Only 5 pounds away from his starting weight of 212. And this is a scenario that I've seen countless times over the last 10 years of coaching and analyzing patterns. Most people are not failing because they're doing everything wrong. In fact, most people do a lot of things right when they're trying to lose weight. And as you saw in the first month, Joe and Chris had pretty much the same results. But the real problems came on later. And it's really 2 things that made all the difference. The first is overall precision. Chris understood his maintenance calories, how big of a deficit he was creating, how much protein he needed. He weighed himself properly every day so he can track weekly averages, not to panic when one weighing gets a bit higher, and he was paying attention to all his meals. When things slowed down, he could just look at the numbers. He knew how many calories to save for social events and how to tweak his meals to reduce hunger. Chris wasn't dieting, he was running a system. This made fat loss feel predictable and kept him in control. Joe, on the other hand, was never really precise. He avoided tracking all his meals and didn't have much data to work with, so when his job got busy and social events started happening, he was just winging it. And he was weighing himself only once in a while, so if he accidentally weighed on a very high day, he would lose a lot of motivation and get frustrated. And when the scale eventually stopped moving, he had no idea what to change other than a last-ditch effort to do more cardio. When that didn't work, he had no idea what was wrong and just got frustrated. Now, the second big difference is how each guy approached the whole process. Chris treated losing body fat like a skill he was learning. He paid attention to weekly trends and got genuinely curious in how his body works. And because he enjoyed the process more and understood more of what was going on, for Chris, this was more of a lifestyle. It was easier for him to stay disciplined during very hard days and trust the process. And eventually, when he got to the goal, he knew how to maintain it. While Joe treated this more like a temporary diet. In his mind, the goal was to just get through it and lose the 30 pounds. There was no real interest in the process, he didn't learn much, and the whole thing felt like a chore. And the truth is, even if I could give a guy like Joe a shredded six-pack right now, he'd just lose it within a few months. Because long-term success on this journey is not just about getting the outcome. It's about learning the skills, building the habits, and becoming the type of person who can't imagine themselves being out of shape. If you'd like me to coach you through that process, check the link in the description below. If you got belly fat you'd like to lose, I highly recommend you watch this video next.